Jonah Reese was once a government cybersecurity prodigy, but 5 years after faking his death, he resurfaced as Kite, the faceless mastermind behind the most sophisticated retail crime wave America had ever seen. From abandoned warehouses in Queens to high-tech smuggling operations in Miami, Reese built a global empire of theft that moved faster than law enforcement could track. But as his stolen merchandise flooded black markets worldwide, one question haunted investigators: how do you catch a criminal who doesn't exist? The first sign of trouble came quietly, almost unnoticed. In early March, a surveillance video from a suburban mall in Paramus, New Jersey, captured a swift and alarming scene. A group of nearly 15 individuals, their faces obscured by masks and hoodies, stormed into a popular sneaker boutique. Within 90 seconds, shelves were cleared, alarms blared, and the group had vanished in a convoy of black SUVs. The footage was uploaded to social media by a bystander, going viral overnight. The public reaction ranged from shock to curiosity, but for law enforcement, it was a red flag. This wasn't an ordinary robbery, it was too fast, too calculated, and it was only the beginning. Days later, similar incidents began cropping up across the country. A luxury electronics store in Chicago was emptied in under 3 minutes. In Los Angeles, a high-end clothing outlet was ransacked by an eerily similar crew. Everywhere it happened, the pattern was identical: sudden entry, rapid looting, immediate exit. No suspects were caught. No fingerprints. No suspect stayed long enough to trigger a police response. Security guards were overwhelmed, caught off guard by the sheer number of thieves and their synchronized movements. Police initially suspected different groups acting independently, but a closer look at the timing and tactics suggested something far more organized. Retailers were rattled. Store owners reported massive financial losses, not only from stolen inventory, but from the impact on customer confidence and insurance premiums. Some began hiring private security. Others closed early or reduced stock levels. Behind the scenes, major retailers quietly met with federal authorities, urging a coordinated response. The FBI became involved, treating the incidents as part of a possible organized crime wave. Investigators dubbed it the Flash Crew phenomenon, a term that would soon be featured in headlines nationwide. As panic spread in retail districts, authorities combed through hours of footage from different cities, trying to identify connections. The same makes and models of getaway vehicles reappeared in different states. The looters were matching gloves and used identical bags to carry merchandise. Everything pointed to a central source of planning. Despite multiple cities being hit, it appeared that the criminals were communicating and coordinating across vast distances, possibly using encrypted channels. Local police departments found themselves outmatched, with no concrete leads, no recovered merchandise, and no suspects in custody. The pressure mounted. News channels began airing montages of raids from coast to coast. Experts warned that this might only be the surface of something deeper. Politicians gave press conferences promising swift justice, while behind closed doors, agencies scrambled for answers. Whispers began circulating within law enforcement circles about a criminal syndicate operating with the precision of a military unit and the invisibility of a ghost. Meanwhile, the raids continued. Cities that thought they were safe were suddenly targeted. Luxury malls became ghost towns by evening. Fear gripped retail employees, many of whom had begun refusing to work night shifts. Something was happening across America, something cold, calculated, and spreading faster than anyone expected. The investigation gained momentum when a suspicious U-Haul van was discovered abandoned near a commuter parking lot in Newark, New Jersey. Inside, officers found torn security tags, empty merchandise boxes from several high-end brands, black duffel bags, and a burner phone tucked beneath the passenger seat. Though the van itself was registered under a fake name, the phone held a single active call log that led to an address in Queens. It was the first tangible lead investigators had seen in weeks. Surveillance was immediately set up at the location, a seemingly deserted warehouse surrounded by fencing and overgrown weeds. For 3 consecutive nights, Agents watched as various unmarked delivery trucks arrived and left in the early hours of the morning. No business signage, no digital footprint. What looked like an abandoned property was quietly humming with activity. On the fourth night, authorities moved in. What they found inside confirmed their fears. The warehouse was a fully operational distribution hub. Inside were racks of stolen merchandise, organized by brand and item type, and rows of machinery used to repackage items with counterfeit barcodes and international shipping labels. There were pallets labeled for destinations in Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia. Several laptops were seized, each containing spreadsheets of retail locations, employee schedules, estimated police response times, and detailed maps showing store layouts. The most disturbing detail was the title on one of the files, Project Sweep. Agents believed they had uncovered part of a well-orchestrated criminal syndicate operating far beyond the capabilities of a local gang. The presence of international logistics planning, repackaging equipment, and a clear hierarchy of operational data pointed toward an organized retail crime ring that had national reach. Authorities traced shipping containers linked to the warehouse and found several had already passed through ports in Miami and Long Beach, loaded under false manifests as commercial aid or construction supplies. Federal agencies, including Homeland Security, were called in to assist. The warehouse workers arrested during the raid claimed to be day laborers with no knowledge of the item's origins. None could identify who gave them instructions or who managed the shipments. Payments were made in cash. Communication came through anonymous messages on prepaid phones. It was a perfect system built on layers of separation. No single person seemed to know the full operation. Still, a consistent pseudonym surfaced among the seized files and delivery logs: Kite. No one had ever met Kite in person. All commands came digitally. Agents. Kite became a ghost, a name without a face, orchestrating thefts across the country without leaving behind a trace of identity. The scope of the crime ring started to alarm officials. What had begun as retail theft now appeared to be a nationwide supply chain of stolen goods, coordinated through encrypted communication and executed with military-like efficiency. The question shifted from who was stealing and became, how deep does this network go, and who was truly in control? The case turned a corner when a man named Mateo Alonso stepped forward with information that would change everything. Mateo had worked as a contract driver for a Miami-based logistics company that specialized in transporting freight to and from warehouse docks and shipping yards. He claimed to have unknowingly delivered at least 6 shipments of commercial lighting equipment and donated clothing to a facility near the port of Miami. At first, he thought nothing of it. The crates were sealed, the paperwork was clean, and the pickup orders came through what appeared to be a legitimate third-party vendor. But after noticing that the delivery locations often changed last minute and payments were always in cash, Mateo grew suspicious. Out of caution, Mateo began keeping copies of every invoice, GPS log, and customer name associated with these deliveries. He also recorded footage using a dashcam installed in his vehicle. One video captured a late-night drop-off where several men in ski masks unloaded crates into a dimly lit storage unit. Mateo claimed he never saw their faces, but their urgency and the way they avoided cameras made him realize something wasn't right. When news of the organized retail raids made national headlines, Mateo connected the dots. He handed over an encrypted USB drive to federal agents containing 6 months' worth of records and video evidence. The information led to an address tied to a customs brokerage office that had recently gone dark. A subsequent investigation revealed that the office was a front. Fake IDs, rubber stamps, and forged shipping manifests were scattered across the premises. Using shipping records from Mateo's files, investigators tracked a container that had just departed for Cartagena, Colombia. It was intercepted by customs officials at sea and brought back for inspection. Hidden inside were dozens of boxes containing stolen designer handbags, smartphones, and high-end sneakers, all packed beneath layers of industrial equipment to avoid detection. The seizure confirmed what investigators feared: the stolen merchandise was being funneled through international shipping lanes under the radar of traditional retail theft detection systems. Even more alarming, some of the containers appeared to have already reached their destinations and vanished into black markets overseas. This wasn't just theft, it was global redistribution. Goods stolen on U.S. soil were being sold at premium prices in foreign cities, where supply chains couldn't compete with the volume or pricing of the black market network. Mateo's testimony also revealed an important clue. Every delivery instruction he received came via a messaging app that self-deleted after 30 seconds. The username associated with those messages? Kite directive. Investigators now had confirmation that Kite was not only real, but actively directing logistics operations. The alias seemed to be present at every level, from planning raids to export coordination, without ever exposing the real identity behind it. The case was no longer about recovering merchandise. It had evolved into a hunt for a digital phantom, someone who had built a criminal empire using technology, distance, and fear. Every lead they uncovered only deepened the mystery of who Kite was and how far the tendrils of this network reached. The decision to launch a decoy operation came after months of dead ends and near misses. Law enforcement realized that waiting for Kite to make a mistake was no longer an option. A bait strategy was developed in collaboration with a major electronics retailer, creating a fully stocked yet secretly monitored pop-up store in downtown Los Angeles. Every shelf was filled with real high-value merchandise: phones, gaming consoles, and smartwatches secured only by minimal staff and no visible guards. Behind the scenes, the store was a fortress of hidden surveillance. Motion sensors, facial recognition cameras, GPS-tracked packaging, and live drone feeds were all in place. The location and timing were strategically leaked into known dark web forums and underground message boards where stolen goods were frequently trafficked. The bait worked. 10 days after the store opened, just after midnight, a convoy of vehicles pulled up. In less than 2 minutes, the group smashed their way inside and began clearing shelves with clinical precision. Each person knew exactly what to grab. The cash drawer was ignored. Cameras and smart devices were targeted instead. What they didn't know was that the packaging had been embedded with micro GPS trackers, and silent alarms had already alerted federal agents monitoring the scene. No chase was initiated. The objective wasn't arrest, it was exposure.
Drones followed the vehicles from above as they made their way through side streets and back alleys, eventually arriving at a rundown industrial building on the outskirts of the city. Agents observed the site for 72 hours, watching as trucks came and went. Containers were loaded, labels applied, and pallets stacked with military-like discipline. Finally, once enough evidence was gathered, a federal task force raided the building just before dawn. If Jonah Reese had faked his death, it would explain the unmatched digital sophistication of the network. Hoping to understand how a man once entrusted with high-level digital security had transformed into the architect of a sprawling retail crime empire. Reese's background was impressive: an MIT graduate with honors. He had worked on encryption protocols for government systems, including classified communication platforms. He was a specialist in digital anonymity and network obfuscation, often praised for his ability to make systems virtually untraceable. But then, 5 years ago, his car had supposedly crashed into a frozen river in rural Illinois. The vehicle was recovered, but the body wasn't. A closed casket funeral was held. No foul play was suspected, until now. The man the government once trusted to protect its systems may have become the very threat it couldn't trace. The manhunt was no longer about stopping a theft ring, it was about finding a ghost who had learned how to vanish perfectly. Inside, they found a distribution nerve center unlike anything they had seen before. Rows of computers displayed real-time shipping schedules, encrypted chat threads, and inventory lists tied to multiple U.S. cities. Orders came through encrypted audio, clips or text commands that vanished moments after being read. However, one of the seized laptops revealed a partial connection to an email account traced back to a man named Jonah Reese. The name was familiar. Jonah had been a respected cybersecurity consultant for a federal contractor 5 years earlier, before reportedly dying in a single car crash outside of Chicago. His body had never been conclusively identified. At the time, it was ruled an accident. Dozens of smartphones were being reprogrammed for overseas use. Counterfeit customs documents were laid out next to forged identification cards and shipping manifests. The walls were covered in maps, route charts, and shift schedules. It was a perfectly organized operation built to process thousands of stolen items a week. But Kite was still missing. None of the people arrested knew his real name. Most had never even heard his voice. Now, with digital traces tying Reese to Kite Directive, authorities reopened the case. With the name Jonah Reese now attached to the alias Kite, investigators delved deep into his past. Hoping to understand how a man once entrusted with high-level digital security had transformed into the architect of a sprawling retail crime empire. Reese's background was impressive, an MIT graduate with honors. He had worked on encryption protocols for government systems, including classified communication platforms. Funds moved quietly from shell companies into cryptocurrency wallets, and those wallets funded a global network of shipping companies, freight brokers, and fake businesses. In Poland, a warehouse filled with American luxury electronics was seized, with similar packing methods and false invoices. In Argentina, customs intercepted a crate of designer clothing matching serial numbers reported stolen from a raid in San Francisco. Every digital trail led to proxies. Every account vanished after use. The last known signal from Kite Directive came from an IP address traced to a remote island in the South Pacific. But by the time agents arrived, the server had been destroyed and the site abandoned. In Tokyo, a boutique market was raided and found selling rebranded merchandise originally traced back to Miami, a system that runs on code, fear, and profit. The man himself may have vanished, but his creation lives on a sophisticated engine of organized retail crime, too vast to shut down with a single arrest. What began with a single raid in a shopping mall had morphed into a modern criminal revolution. The age of the silent thief had arrived. Reese's network wasn't just surviving, it was expanding globally. The same blueprint used in the US was now being replicated abroad. Get the helm. From a digital command post no one could find. It was all invisible on the surface, but beneath it was a meticulously structured system that fueled the ongoing surge in organized retail crime. Every raid, every shipment, every fraudulent customs document was connected by Reese's digital fingerprints and seen, but undeniable. He was a specialist in digital anonymity and network obfuscation, often praised for his ability to make systems virtually untraceable. But then, 5 years ago, his car had supposedly crashed into a frozen river in rural Illinois. The vehicle was recovered, but the body wasn't. A closed-casket funeral was held. No foul play was suspected, till now. Banking records soon revealed that within weeks of the declared accident, a series of offshore accounts had been opened using synthetic identities built from partial social security numbers of deceased individuals. Interpol was briefed, and soon reports began emerging from other parts of the world. Back in the United States, law enforcement agencies cracked down on dozens of copycat groups inspired by Kite's success. Young crews mimicked the smash-and-grab tactics, but without the coordination and infrastructure, most were quickly arrested. Still, the damage had been done. Retailers across the country reported unprecedented losses. Some stores began limiting hours or locking down high-value items behind cages. Malls invested in private security and facial recognition. Consumers began noticing emptier shelves and higher prices as businesses tried to recover. Despite all efforts, Kite remained at large. Attempts to locate Reese in person were met with silence. The hunt for Jonah Reese continues, but authorities now believe he has built a decentralized empire that no longer requires his constant presence. A system that runs on code, fear, and profit. The man himself may have vanished, but his creation lives in a sophisticated engine of organized retail crime, too vast to shut down with a single arrest. What began with a single raid in a shopping mall had morphed into a modern criminal revolution. The age of the silent thief had arrived.